impossible for our leaders to show any more hypocrisy and insanity and disregard for our fundamental God-given rights and freedoms. They surprise us yet again. We have Canada and the United States that are known throughout the world to be beacons of freedom, to be these bright lights of democracy where people from anywhere and everywhere, from every walk of life, no matter your race or ethnicity or any of these other superficial differences, that every one of us has the right to freedom. The right to free speech, to express ourselves, to think independently, and to even, I dare say, express our displeasure through protesting decisions by our own government. Thinking this, we would all be wrong. Now, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau in Canada has yet again very recently shown just how anti-freedom and anti-democracy he actually is.
We have a robust functioning democracy, and public protests are an important part of making sure we're getting messages out there, and Canadians are getting messages out there and highlighting how they feel about various issues. But using protests to demand changes to public policy is something that I think is worrisome.
Okay. So here we have the Prime Minister of Canada saying that, yes, we have a highly functioning democracy and people's voices, the Canadian people's voices should be heard and they have the right and freedom to protest. However, if those protests are used to demand change in government policy, then no, that shouldn't be allowed. Just in that statement in and of itself, you got to wonder how this guy doesn't see the hypocrisy in his singular phrase that freedom of speech is welcome, just don't use it to demand change in your own government. Why else would anyone go out and protest? If you are happy with everything that's going on, that your government is doing everything just right, why would you go out on the streets and lift your voice? Why would you go out and protest unless it is actually to demand change? So this statement by Prime Minister Justin Trudeau is very, very revealing, actually, about what democracy means to him, and frankly, how democracy in his mind does not include free speech. So the latest example now here, again, of the hypocrisy coming from the Canadian government has to do with Jordan Peterson. Now, we've seen other examples before how Canada recently, they banned the sale of handguns. They don't believe in the right of individuals to defend themselves or their loved ones. We have seen also similarly how President Biden here in our own country has hinted at his desire to do the same. And so when we look at our own constitution, look at Canada's constitution, we see further and further infringement upon our God-given rights and freedoms. Now, Jordan Peterson is the latest victim of Canada's prosecution against free speech. He is being threatened by a government regulatory organization, the College of Psychologists, and they are threatening to take away his medical license unless he goes through retraining that is overseen by them and approved by them. And if he fails to do so, they will take away his license. And what was his offense? Well, he said some things that offended some people. We're going to go to a clip now from a member of parliament from Canada's Conservative Party. He has been in this position since 2004, and he currently serves as the leader of the opposition in Canada's parliament.
So the Ontario College of Psychologists has told Jordan Peterson that he either undergo retraining for social media etiquette or lose his license to practice as a clinical psychologist. This follows a number of complaints by people who don't like his online posts, one of which is a retweet of something I posted, another is a criticism of Justin Trudeau. Now, it should go without saying that in a free country, professionals should not lose their jobs and licenses because they express a political opinion contrary to the licensing body that's mandated by the government.
The statement that he just made really sums it up, that in a free country, people should be allowed to say what they want to say without threat of retaliation or retribution from their own government. But that's exactly what's happening to Jordan Peterson right now. He received a very threatening letter from the College of Psychologists. Jordan Peterson may have lacked professionalism in public statements made on social media and during a January 25th, 2022 podcast appearance, which happened to be on the Joe Rogan Experience. None of these complaints are coming from people who were medical patients or clients of Jordan Peterson. They're not coming from anyone that had anything to do with anyone who was a client or had any kind of acquaintance within his medical practice, which frankly has not been functioning for the last few years simply because of the fact that since he became a publicly known figure, he has been under attack by these regulatory agencies and people who are critics of the things that he is saying. Jordan Peterson says, "What exactly have I done that is so seriously unprofessional that I am now a danger, not only to any new potential clients, but to the public itself?" It's hard to tell with some of the complaints. One involved the submission of an entire transcript of a 3-hour discussion on the Joe Rogan podcast. But here are some examples that might produce some reasonable concern amongst Canadians who care about such niceties as freedom of belief, conscience, and speech. 1. I retweeted a comment made by conservative leader Pierre Poilievre about the unnecessary severity of the COVID lockdowns. I criticized Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. I criticized Justin Trudeau's former chief of staff, Gerald Butts. I criticized an Ottawa city councillor, and I made a joke about the Prime Minister of New Zealand. Now, Jordan Peterson continues to say, every single accusation is not only independent of my clinical practice, but explicitly political. Every single thing I have been sentenced to correction for saying is insufficiently leftist politically. I'm simply too classically liberal or even more unforgivably conservative. Now, here's the thing. Canada's constitution guarantees freedom of conscience, religion, belief, opinion, and expression. Our own Constitution of the United States, in the First Amendment of the Bill of Rights, guarantees the same. And yet here we are in a place where we have the leaders of these two countries who claim to be beacons and champions of democracy, President Biden and Prime Minister Trudeau, through their actions telling us a very different story about what they believe democracy to consist of. In their minds, it's very clear. Democracy does not include freedom of speech. It does not include our right to defend ourselves. And it certainly does not include the right to protest against our own government. The knowledge of these facts, paying attention to their actions rather than to their words as they speak about democracy, is important to every single one of us because it tells us how much we must stand up to protect those very rights and freedoms that are enshrined in our own Constitution.